the keyboard to the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports.
To the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports Podcast. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't yet, go leave a review on the podcast. I promise we read all of them. It makes us so happy to know that people are enjoying the podcast. But if you do nothing at all, if it's the only thing you do, share the podcast with a friend, a colleague, someone you know who's also interested in gaming. That we really appreciate more than anything. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Paul. Thank you. Hey, listeners, we're back at it again. Another episode. It's either the end of June or early July when you're listening to this. So happy 4th of July in advance. And actually, Paul, I wanted to throw a quick shout out to something we did. You know, we recently promoted a podcast episode featuring Rob Moore of the Sentinels, and we did an awesome giveaway. You may have seen it on our newsletter, on our socials. I just wanted to say to our regular listeners, you know, keep an eye out. We're going to be running a lot more of those as we go forward. So that was a really fun thing we did in a great episode. If you haven't listened to it, go back and check it out.
I love the plug. It was a fantastic episode. So much fun. And the giveaways are fun, right? Like, listen to Business of Esports and win free stuff. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer if you ask me. I'm sorry if my voice is going, or if, I'm still not in studio, obviously, but I've also been doing a whole circuit of conferences and things here. And so if my voice is going, if it's not my usual booming kind of tone, I apologize. I'm doing my best. And for everyone, I will just tease, there's so much content coming up, so much like gaming conference content, so many opportunities to interact with the Business of Esports, like live and in person. There's just so many things in the works that I know Jimmy and I are super excited about, but lots of things coming up. And so stay tuned for that. Pay attention, follow the stuff, follow the podcast, follow all our socials. This is the best way to keep informed. Jimmy, by the way, I was speaking at this conference on crypto and gaming. That, this is sort of the what everyone wants to talk about now, right? Metaverse and crypto, gaming and crypto, and all these intersections. And it was funny because there's a bunch of people who were at the conference who listened to the podcast, and they kind of cornered me, and they're like, they wanted to know why I'm so down on mobile gaming. And people, I think, misunderstand. They were defending you and kind of attacking me on the mobile gaming thing. And I'm like, I don't hate mobile gamers. And I'm not personally a mobile gamer. I love it. The capitalist in me loves it. I think it's a great gateway drug. Just want to make clear, I'm not anti-mobile gaming. I'm not a mobile gamer. Is that not obvious, Jimmy?
I just want to say thank you to all the fans that defended me and supported me out of the mobile phones and into the streets,
But there's so much love for the show, like in person. Like I said, it completely justifies everything we do when people come up to me and say they listen to the show and they disagree with me. I love it, right? I kind of love it even more when people listen and have a different opinion. That makes it even more fun. So I don't want to waste any more time. We got an amazing guest this week. I mean, it gets better every week. We always have the best of the best, the top people in the industry, as everyone knows. And this week we have none other than Stu Grubbs. Stu is the CEO and co-founder of Lightstream. Very, very cool company doing very interesting things in the gaming and streaming space. Stu, welcome to the Business of Esports Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Stu, for our listeners who maybe don't know much about you or don't know about Lightstream, would love a little bit of the story, the Stu story, the background, why you got into gaming, what Lightstream's all about, what you guys are doing there, focused on there. Would love a little bit of that background and that story.
Yeah, I mean, I probably have a very similar story to anybody else who got into gaming, so I'm not going to repeat kind of the formative years. But born in 1985, right when all the good stuff was starting to come out, and at-home entertainment was like getting good. So, went through all the normal steps of 0 to 18, just falling in love with it. Going to college, I guess you could say now successfully dropped out of a college computer engineering degree because I had an opportunity to work in gaming for an illustrious, $300 a month for a company called gotfrag.com, which back in the day covered Team Fortress 2, Counter-Strike, all of that, which was where my heart was. And so I was a big part of that team for a long time. A lot of great people came out of there. A lot of wonderful people I know in the industry and esports came out of the Gotfrag days. That was bought by MLG, so I was part of Major League Gaming for a while. I got an opportunity to go work at World Series of Video Games. Some stuff they were doing was something called GameRiot.com at the time, which is I think exploded at one point. But I then quit. I quit all of gaming. I moved to Colorado to ski and be an EMT. I wanted something different for a while. I left for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And then I came back as a resident PC enthusiast for a liquid cooling company called Asetek. You probably haven't heard of them, but you've probably heard of the NZXT Kraken. At
the core of every single great water cooler, right? Ace is an Asetek design.
Yeah. I worked with Kevin, for instance, who had just started Origin PC when he was building 20 PCs a month to design a liquid cooler for them and so on. So I met a lot of people in the industry through that job because worked with all the different system integrators and whatnot. And that was when I was living in California. And then I got an opportunity from an old friend in the esports world to run global marketing for SteelSeries. And so I was there for a few years, 2, 3, something like that. Their strategy changed when they took on investors, outside investment. And I was like, I'm more of your grassroots marketing kind of guy. We had done kind of one of the industry's longest running esports sponsorships. SteelSeries was competitive gaming gear, and they were shifting away to be more of a brand that they are today, which I think is a great brand. It just wasn't within my skill set. I was very focused on kind of the competitive aspect. And I quit there, and 6 months later, I was founding Lightstream. So that's the abbreviated version of this story. But yeah.
Stu, maybe you can talk a little bit about Lightstream and what you guys are doing there.
Sure. Back in 2014, most of the people broadcasting on the internet were gamers. There were the occasional, big nerd like me that might stream a SpaceX launch or a NASA launch or something like that. But the vast, on Ustream, but the vast majority of the content was gaming related. And so we were looking at the problem of how do we use the cloud to offset some of the resources it takes to stream? How do we make it easier, more approachable than something like OBS and so on? And so our current Lightstream studio is really built to kind of mimic that workflow. Set up your scenes, switch between them. We can take in feeds from your Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. We feed that to the cloud. You can access that in any web browser, your whole setup saved up there. All the benefits of modern cloud-based web apps, but applied to something as complex as live video. Today, we're more of a video technology company. We still offer a studio. We offer something called Rainmaker, which handles kind of alerts and overlays, some of the basics of that, but primarily is actually an audience analytics tool for both creators and brands. I think in the startup world, that what doesn't get measured doesn't change. And I think that you have to be data driven in all your decision making. But I don't know that I know that some of the best streamers and the fastest growing streamers understand that mentality. And I think it's still something, a learned behavior for a lot of people starting out, is that you should look at what content's working for you and what's not. But primarily, we have this patented live video technology that's in the cloud that we work with our new parent company, Teradek, with. We build a new studio that's based on that and all kinds of things. Yeah, we had to invent a lot of the technology to make studio possible back in the day, and a lot of that is now something that we license. We've worked with, we're longtime partners with Mixer and Microsoft, and still are with Xbox, and so on. Yeah, that's what we do: cloud-based live streaming and the associated creative suite you need to be successful.
It's fascinating, Stu, and you mentioned twice now, Xbox and Microsoft and other console games at the start before kind of really going cloud. I'm curious, a distribution of your users. What are you seeing as far as console users versus PC in terms of who's actually what they're using your product for and from where?
Yeah, we made a conscious decision several years ago to focus on what difficult problems we solve best. PC gaming, by and large, is I think, solved area. People know there are a variety of desktop softwares you can install. So we take kind of the complex scenarios and make those really approachable. So what I'm talking about is you want to stream your Xbox. There's one route, which is buying the $150, $200 capture card, hooking that up to OBS, learning how to use OBS, having a PC next to your Xbox that can run OBS that hooks up your capture card to your Xbox, and so on. And so in that world, yes, you're going to, once you figure it out, potentially have a nice stream. But then there's also, anytime you have a big setup of anything in life, those are all failure points as well as you can experience in anything you set up that's complex. So in our world, it is stream to Lightstream directly from your Xbox. The Xbox is capable of streaming, and instead of going straight to Twitch, you can send it into Lightstream, where you can add your graphics and overlays and everything you'd expect, drag them all on. And the cool part is you don't even have to have Studio open once it's set up. Once you go live from your Xbox, we get your video feed. We know what project you typically use for your Xbox stream. We just start layering that on in the cloud and send it. So most of our creators are console streamers right now. We also offer mobile. I know you guys don't like mobile gaming. I'm just kidding. But we also have a mobile app for capturing mobile games on your phone, and it'll do the same workflow. You go live from your phone. The cloud automatically composites on all your overlays and alerts and whatnot, and you don't have to have Studio open once you've got it set up. Of course, you can have Studio open, but I think the real beauty of it is for a lot of people that might be streaming in their living room, on their Xbox, or may not have a computer at home that's powerful enough to run your standard hardware desktop software setup. You go live from your Xbox and you have just as much of a professional looking setup as somebody who's invested thousands of dollars. And I don't expect that everyone sticks around with us forever, but I think that we've lowered the barrier to entry from a technology, from a cognitive load standpoint, from a financial standpoint, to say, hey, do I want to create content, and am I getting good at it?
I mean, Stu, is the idea that the bar is part of the thesis that there's a massive, essentially, population of people that would stream if they were, if they had the tools, if it was easy enough, if it was part of the thesis that this is just too complex and the bar is too high. And if we lower this bar, it opens it up to an entirely new audience.
Yeah.
And,
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, and the second part is do you think that we've reached the point where basically with something like Lightstream, now literally anyone can do it? It's the grandmother test. My grandmother could probably stream content. The tools have become so intuitive, the tools you guys have built.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's awesome that your grandmother games on Xbox. That's cool. No, but I think that a gating factor in the community that we have around content creation can often be either financial or technological. And I think you have a lot of people in your personal life that that are funny, charming, what have you, but may not be the best at technology. And so, content creation is about community building. It's about great storytelling. It's about your communication skills. So why should a gating factor of being successful in that area or be financial or technological? And so I think at least what we're doing in terms of lowering the barrier to entry is opening up the chance for discovery of, the next great storyteller, whether that person is a gamer, a chef that's going to stream their cooking shows on Twitch, whatever it might be. But, only in our industry are you expected to be your on-screen talent, your own technical support, your director, producer, writer, all of that. And so the more of that we can, I think, make not about fixing your setup and more about telling your story, I think the better. It's actually like the whole company's vision statement really is we empower more storytellers and grow the communities in which they tell them.
I always think about like the competitive matrix, right? They teach in business school, right? And you've got sort of two axes, and you want to put yourself in like the top right quadrant usually. And I'm curious how you think about Lightstream versus like OBS or XSplit or Streamlabs OBS or Stream Elements or some of the other players. Like, is the analytics stuff the big competitive advantage for you guys? Is it the ease of use? Is it the, like, how do you guys talk about yourselves relative to the other, tools and platforms that are out there?
I mean, 3 of those OBSs are the same OBS, right? But
at least have OBS at its core.
No, I think it goes back to, we looked at, where does cloud actually solve a problem? And I don't think it's necessary. For instance, we don't solve in our current iteration of Studio large scale events. They're big name softwares that are much more expensive than OBS or anything, and much more complicated, that are going to be best to do, say, BlizzCon, right? We don't solve PC gaming anymore. Back when resources were hard to come by on a machine, it made sense to maybe offload encoding to the cloud and potentially get some gains there. But when you're looking at PCs now that have a significant amount of overhead in most games, and then kind of proliferation of hardware encoders and things like that, without getting too nerdy on it. But so we don't really try to compete in the PC gaming space. We left it behind a while ago. We actually used to have a client that we offered that would connect you to our cloud and all that on your PC. And we actually pulled it back from the market. So we really focused on, like IRL streaming. We're perfect for that. You go live from your phone. All your graphics at home are already set up. You don't have to set up a cloud server. You don't have to understand how a cloud server works. A lot of IRL streamers now set up custom RTMP setups and all this other stuff. With us, you set up an RTMP source, line that up, add your graphics, and then later on you go live from your phone. When we detect a signal on that RTMP source, we send your whole project live, and you're off to the races. And when you lose signal on your phone, our cloud server is the one streaming, so that stays live for your audience while technical difficulties is up. And then when you reconnect, the signal comes back. So there's some really cool things like that we are infinitely complex if we don't exist. The mobile game capture thing works exactly like the PlayStation thing, works exactly like the Xbox thing. I as you know from the history I just gave you, gaming is near and dear to my heart. I think we had success there because, we weren't 2 text messages away from anybody we wanted to meet with because of a long history in this space. But, where we're going, I think, is really focused on the broader creator economy. People doing podcasts, people who have to do marketing for their small to medium-sized business, who have to do marketing for their enterprise level business. And the CEO says, hey, I want to do an AMA every month. And the marketing team's like, we've never streamed. I think these are areas where, we're focusing on kind of broader storytelling. But so competitively, I think the industry is growing large enough that there's plenty of room at the table. I think a lot of us are friends behind the scenes when it doesn't even seem like our products overlap. We've, talked to folks at a variety of broadcast softwares about what they're doing differently, who they're kind of focused on and so on. My buddy Philippe owns EasyLive.io, which is more of a different developer platform and all that kind of stuff. So by and large, we don't focus on OBS because it's already a great piece of software written by wonderful people. And yes, there are variations of that written by other smart people that are trying to make it maybe more approachable and more integrated. But we don't think about it because they're focused on that side of the market, and we're focused on where we can add value. So that's how we think about it. We're more focused on, say, the maybe StreamYards of the world and things like that.
So what would you say are the most exciting, not exciting, but rather from the voice of your users, what do you see them using the most or liking the most with regard to the feedback they're giving you? Where do you think you guys need to improve upon? And as well as data analytics, what's the most actionable data that you're collecting and sharing that you notice your users are really liking? And I want to get more into the stuff that sets you guys apart, because it sounds like quite a lot and that you do quite a lot quite well.
I'm glad that is the perception. I think we're always looking at ourselves as where we can be better. I think that's just the kind of plight of the entrepreneur, as you guys might know. And so I always kind of don't see the forest through the trees. Sometimes I'm like, man, we can do that a little bit. So I appreciate that. For us, we've been really focused on how the creator looks at their journey and kind of holistically. So we said years ago, how do we help them create more easily, right? And that was studio. And then how do we help them understand their growth? If I'm streaming, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Wednesday is not doing so well. I don't get any viewers. I should really just double down on Mondays and Fridays, maybe explore Thursday, but I can drop Wednesday. It's about time spent. It's about tuning that. It's being able to look at your 3-hour-long stream in 10-minute increments that's color-coded by which game you were playing. And that's in Rainmaker. And so you can actually see that when you started playing X game, it went up. And then you switched over to, Final Fantasy, and your entire audience just left. And you're like, you were happy, but nobody else was. And so I'm not picking on Final Fantasy. I'm just pointing out a graph I saw. I think it was Ninja's graph. He played Fortnite.
I was going to say that was a shocker.
Yeah, for sure. And so
I like his Final Fantasy streams personally, but
right. And the guy's happy, and unfortunately his audience wasn't. So, so there's a lot to take in there. Also, you do have to make decisions on making content should be a joyous experience. Otherwise, it's it'll be miserable for you. Slogging it out this is not a business you want to be in if you're just punching your time card. So I think figuring out what makes you happy and what's also making your audience happy and what kind of audience you're attracting. We've done things like sentiment analysis with our friends over at Spike Trap. So we can look for kind of common keywords, most used emotes in your chat, but also you can look at different segments of your stream and see if the chat overall was positive or negative. And the cool thing about the work that Spike Trap has done, for instance, is they've tuned their detection to a gaming audience. So when you say that's sick, it's not considered a negative thing and all that kind of stuff. So there's some really interesting things we've done in those areas. I think long term, by giving creators metrics and brand metrics, we're hoping to see more investment in the space. When a brand can quantitatively support their efforts in sponsorship by having the data that says this was worth it to their boss, in terms their boss understands, in terms in digital paid media terms. We were on stream for this long, and this is what the audience, and this is how the audience felt about it. When we mentioned our brand, people responded really positively on the stream. And so we're going to actually continue the sponsorship. And it takes the subjectivity a little bit out of just going for the people with the biggest numbers, or going, oh, well, we don't really know what we got out of this, so we're not going to do it again. I think it really helps bring some objective quantitative metrics to something that has largely been, I like how this person, looks, talks, and their numbers. So I'm just going to go ahead and sponsor. And that's coming from somebody who used to sponsor a lot of people. So, at Steel Series. I think that's
there's
where
definitely
we're adding value. Yeah.
There's definitely some esports teams that have relied a little bit on the black box, right? Like sponsor us and, don't ask too many questions.
Yeah. Well, in startup world, it wouldn't fly, right? Like any good mentor or investor is going to tell you these are vanity metrics. But somehow for a long time in esports, it was just look at our global reach. Well, is that per event? Is that per campaign? Is that what is this? And then, I've been on both sides of that. I've been going out to get sponsorships with that deck, and I've also gotten that deck for years at Steel Series. So, I could argue both sides of why that's, necessary sometimes. But I think on the, just one more piece on the Lightstream side, because you asked what our customers say about that. I think when we made peripherals at Steel Series, one of the things that we often talk about is that while you were using it, you should pretty much forget that you were using it. If we really did our job as a peripheral, it sinks into the background. You've worn the headset for 8 hours and you forgot you even have it, right? You use this mouse and your hand hasn't cramped up. It's just part of your arm now. The keyboard. But really, it should feel an extension of yourself. That's what good ergonomics is. And I think similarly, I'd kind of like our broadcast software to take that as a final form. I really love that we disappear for all of our Xbox and PlayStation streamers. They literally go to their Xbox, they hit go live, and they just start gaming and talking to the crowd. And I think for me, that's kind of the final form of what we wanted. It was you should not be fixing your setup. You should not be figuring shit out. You should be getting to the storytelling, right? And I'd like to achieve that with what we have coming next as well for the non-gaming audience. We've been working on something we call Studio 2. Can't talk too much about it, but it's a much more simplified workflow. It's I don't think we're inventing something nobody's ever seen before in a lot of ways, but we're doing it better. It's that kind of plussing up of oh yeah, that's a cool idea, but it'd be even cooler if it acts. So we'll probably see that in the next month or two. Pretty excited about it. But that idea of kind of disappearing to the background so you can focus on what you're really trying to accomplish. There's definitely people who always want to tinker, but I think the vast majority of people have something to say and just want to get to saying it.
The best tools are the ones that don't get in the way, right? Like if the tool gets in the way, there's a problem. Right. You're focused on the wrong things, I think. Right. So that's interesting. Stu, I just want to, because you've mentioned it a few times, like you've got, we get every so often a guest like you that has just this incredibly long and like varied career in gaming and esports, right? Like on the hardware side and on the software side, and you've sort of touched a lot of different things within the gaming universe. I always love to ask people like you the question of, what have you noticed like over the many years? It's getting sort of 30,000 foot perspective now. Like, what have you noticed that has changed? Like, what are some of the big trends, some of the big changes for the better or for the worse in your mind that have happened over sort of the long career you've had in gaming?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing that's changed is that all my friends are old now. We were all like 18-year-old kids when we got started, but that was 10, 11 years ago. I think a lot of things have changed for the better. I think some things are frustratingly still the same. But the better things, just because the world has enough negativity, the better things are what I'm really loving about gaming hardware, for instance, is I think industrial design has drastically improved over just the last 3 years. I mean, and of course, I'll give some props to where I used to work, SteelSeries. The Arctis is one of the most beautiful headsets ever put into the gaming market. It's just whether or not you like it for a variety of reasons. I think it's also one of the most popular, but I just think it's a very beautiful product. I had nothing to do with it. I'm just like, I have seen other companies really getting out of that kind of gamer ugly, that kind of like, like
red sticker,
everybody doubles down on it. And I don't want to even name names because some of my friends work at these companies, but over the years, there were some things that was like, oh, now it's for gamers. And it was just like their office product. And they added a bunch of bullshit to it and called it gamer product now. But, so design, I think overall gaming as a lifestyle is being taken more seriously. That it's not your identity, but it's part of your life. And that's fine. But that doesn't necessarily mean you want everything in your life to quickly identify you as only a gamer, right? And so that comes through in design. That comes through in communication styles of different things. I think similarly with esports, I've always been a big fan. I think there was a time period where it felt childish. And I think not that it was, but it felt like it was taken that way, I guess. And when you told somebody that you really like to watch competitive gaming or whatever, I think now, I don't think everybody feels this way, but I do think there's a broader spectrum of people that look at it as professional competition and that you can enjoy that. And maybe that's just because we're all getting older. And so now you're just seeing older people really dig it. But like, I think that it feels better to talk about that, to share it, to, like you watch, and there's also a variety of competitions now in the world, which when we were a kid, I felt like it was baseball, football, basketball, and anything outside of that, and especially growing up in America, it was considered like, what the hell are you doing watching that? So it was a little bit better that. So those are some of the things I think have changed. I think this industry, gaming and esports, still it's done a lot. I think to better itself. I love that some things have improved. I mean, you could definitely remember 90s conferences and things like that. But like we're holding better space for women and LGBT and people of color and all of that. But then you think you've moved and you've been a more inclusive community, and it crosses borders, and esports does that in such a beautiful way. It brings a lot of countries together and a lot of fans together and all of that. and then you have some waves of like things that come out, and that's really frustrating. So I'm hoping to see more light shed and that change, but it's certainly better than it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early aughts. So I'm positive. I have positive feelings about where it's trending. But yeah, overall, I see a much more mature industry, and that feels good. It feels good from all of that. Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I mean, in that same kind of line of thinking, I'm curious how you're attracting new users, what demographics you see them coming from in terms of age, specifically, but broaden that as you see fit. And then you had also mentioned, an interest in attracting podcasters, competing with StreamYard. How are you marketing or growing within the gaming community, within the esports community as a subset of gaming, as well as outside of gaming and into more general content creators?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I think that, content creation seems to skew overall much younger. So demographics wise, I think we're very broad on almost every other demographic you would consider, but age is definitely something that I think is still just skews towards the younger group. There's definitely outliers and really great ones at that. But I think by and large, and I'm talking strictly about live and what we've seen there. Obviously, there's tons of people from all over the spectrum of demographics on YouTube and things like that. But in live and specifically in gaming, it tends to skew a little bit more in the kind of early 30s and 20s and so on. As we look outside of gaming, inside of gaming has strongly been word of mouth, and we have big partnerships. We always have, and so we count on those partnerships to say, if you're trying to accomplish X, Lightstreams is your best option. And of course, they have suggestions for other scenarios. So primarily our strategy in gaming has always been through partnership, understanding the goal of the platform we're working with, seeing where we align with those goals, and then helping promote that. So we don't historically spend a lot of money on anything like paid advertising and things like that. And that might come from, just my days at SteelSeries, but I find like product-led growth, working on community. I think even when our first 2 years, the product was horribly broken pretty regularly back in 2014, 2015, still occasionally today, because that's just the nature of software and the beast of live. But I think that a focus on community kept people really interested in us when we were really, messing it up. They'd be going live and we'd drop them somehow or something like that would happen. And we had a really strong focus on support and community and putting our people out in front. So they weren't it wasn't just me out there, but a lot of people know a lot of members of our team. And I think that really put a human face on the people behind what we were building. So that was and I know you asked about marketing and now I'm talking about support, but that's really what our strategy was. It was how do we actually, the good news is that we're of the community and we're not just we didn't build something and go, ooh, gaming looks like a good market like some companies do. So we, that gave us some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Cred, to live that. And we do our gaming streams and everyone's actually there. So, on the StreamYards and the BeLive and the Research Studios of the world and all of that stuff, again, that side of the market is growing just as quickly, if not faster, in terms of just the sheer number of people. I think the pandemic really accelerated learning a new tool set, which is kind of the authentic conversation you have when something's live and can't be recut. And so I think a lot of teams, small businesses, all these people are learning that this is I'm not saying that everyone's going to only do live now, but I think it's a new tool set in their kind of reach. My friend owns a yoga studio here in Chicago, and she's now doing a little bit of both. Vast majority of classes are in person, but she's got a live show she does as well. So there's kind of that ever expanding. So I think there's room without being too competitive against each other. But we're all doing something a little bit different. Esports, it's not crazy enough. It's not really a focus for us. I think the vast majority of esports production, when they get to the high end, are using what we were talking about earlier, the kind of in-house on-prem software that you would use to produce a great show. for better or for worse, vast majority of esports now is highly produced content. You don't really have a kind of the small basement, 50 Xboxes in a MLG dungeon anymore. You have kind of larger MLG events, not MLG events, but larger scale production. So we don't really play in that space. So biggest thing I could say that we got to esports is we've been doing a lot of the chess championships. So those are global, and so they're using the cloud to switch between different games and things like that. And so we've been used in those, and that's been fun. But yeah, believe it or not, not much esports, even though I miss it. I love watching competitive gaming. So.
Stu, what are the categories that you are seeing the most growth in then? I'm curious, like you talked about IRL, but like, is it, and I'm obviously joking, but like, is a lot of hot tub streamers? Is there a lot of, cooking streams? Is it I'm curious, are there subcategories where you guys are seeing like clear trends, clear growth areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, I bought all these slot machines and they've been doing really well on Twitch. Just kidding. I don't know if you saw the report we put out recently, but yeah, slots are a top 10 category on Twitch now.
Wow. It's basically like XQC, right? Like it doesn't.
So, no, we're largely seeing, right now we largely see our growth in the kind of console market. We solve a hard problem for $8 a month. I mean, it's just like, I could go buy all this stuff, get it all set up and figured out, or I could first try using just my Xbox. And I think that really helps. So that's primarily our growth is console right now. Now, we're starting to see more and more of I don't know how to classify them all without listing them all out, but I'll just say just chatting streams. They like what we're doing now. Any variation of this that you might have, single can streams, stuff. So we're starting to see an uptick there. But I think that's more what Studio 2 is built to address. Studio 1 mimics OBS. You have to know how to set up a stream. So meaning that design a stream. So you have to set up your scenes and you have to go in there and lay everything out pixel perfect. Our new studio has a lot of animation libraries and things baked in that kind of handle all that for you. So you can feel and look good in less than 5 minutes as opposed to having to set all that up. So I think we'll see a whole new growth vector for us. Outside of gaming with that product.
Stu, I'm curious how big you think live can actually get. Like when you think about sort of VCs like to talk about total addressable market and, something we touch on. But like, how big does live really get in your mind?
Well, some of the trends we're seeing right now is that every in-person event now has a live component to it, either a preview day ahead of time or some kind of hybrid talk track that's going to be run via live. I think everyone and their mother is starting a podcast these days and wants to, and I think you have the halo effect of that too, where you see, kind of like how everybody wants to use Tiger Woods golf clubs. You saw a podcast, you thought it was great. You have your own topic you want to discuss. And so I think there's a lot of people trying to get different messages out there. And I think we often underestimate just how much that storytelling is the basis of our society. It's how we learn best. It's how, so you look at education, it's how we share our stories. It's how we share our history. So when you look at the kinds of content that can be created, it's really kind of as varied as it would be human communication. Now, I always tell customers, for instance, there's a big difference between whether what you're trying to accomplish requires video conferencing versus live streaming, right? Do you want a stage where you're going a few to many, or do you want a round table where everyone's discussing? And so I do think there's categories where you need more of the Zoom aspect and you need 50 people in a room where anybody could have a mic at any time. But I do think we're now talking to communities that are, varied, obviously, in the people that make up that community, and meaning that some people want to come to the live event. Some people don't. So we've been talking to kind of government. We had a government group. New York mandated that all town halls have to be live streamed so that citizens can tune in. And so you're looking at things like that. So there's, I think, all kinds of corners where it continues to grow. And so much as storytelling remains a central theme of our basis of learning and communication. I think that's how big it is. It's been, and the reason why I'm giving you such a woo-woo answer is that it's tried to get measured a few times. The TAM is hard. We're now because it's growing too quickly. coming out of Asia, for instance, is live e-commerce. And it's a trend that's starting to take on here. You can see it on your Amazon homepage here in the States these days. But people are now like amateur streamers can now get Amazon products and run their own QVC-like show. This is on special for the next hour. Well, I don't think your average, like picking up something off my desk and just showing you and going, look, you should buy this is really that cool. I could totally see, if somebody was to like clothes, for instance, it'd be great to see them on an actual live person if I'm going to be, live shopping and go, yeah, actually that looks great. I like how that shirt hangs, like whatever it might be, as opposed to static picture. So I can see where that takes off. So I think there's a lot. I think it's getting bigger and bigger. I don't think it's, infinite, but yeah, that's
cool.
That's my answer.
Jimmy, I don't know if you had anything else before we get to everyone's favorite new segment.
I had one, and I know I'm delaying that segment here, and it's mine, so it's my favorite. But one more, Stu, which was
I've literally been calling it everyone's favorite new segment for about 6 months now.
Yeah, so. It's not that new anymore.
It's not that new anymore.
But Stu, you had mentioned also hybrid models. I'm just curious the use case, the interest. I mean, live is such a tedious thing. It requires so much energy and effort. People have to always be on. It's something that we talk about, right? Because you can't really be a fake personality when you're live 8 hours a day. That's really who you are. It's hard to put on a facade for that long. But I'm curious, with these hybrid models, are you seeing a need where people want to cut to an old episode for half an hour or live stream something that they've done where it's live to their audience, but it's a pre-recorded piece of content that they're integrating with their live? I'm just curious what the future of live looks like to you on how people are using your tools to actually go live.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. We have had people run significantly longer pre-recorded clips than, say, an intro or an outro, and have some things that they wanted to show off content-wise. I think that gets complicated, obviously, for any kind of licensing and all of that. When I was talking about hybrid, I was, specifically talking about events, any kind of physical space, gatherings. If we had a town hall meeting here in Chicago, for instance, or city hall kind of event, chamber of commerce, any of that kind of stuff, there might be a number of people who, want to understand what's going on, but can't be there physically. Conferences, it's only tedious. I think, that's one of our goals, is to make that about as not tedious as possible. But also, if you're already going to be setting up for a stage production, you've done probably 80% of the lift it would take to go live. If you've got cameras set up for a conference and microphones wired up and a podium going and all of that, that's all wired to a central hub. Your next step is to kind of feed that into some kind of broadcast software, because you probably are going to be showing those cameras on the screens. So I think that the kind of people that tune in to watch live expect live. I think record to live is very frustrating when people realize it. There's been kind of world premieres of music videos where they do this on YouTube, where you and it's supposed to be live. And so it is live in the sense that the community is seeing this video together for the first time, but in the sense that there's no host opening it up and saying, we can't wait to show this to you, or the band, whatever, I think becomes a friction point for a lot of people. I don't think I've ever, if I'm going to watch recorded content, I'm just going to go to YouTube. I don't think I've ever tuned into a Twitch stream that's doing reruns and stuck around to rewatch them with a new chat. Like, it just isn't, I don't think there's no interactivity.
With no interaction, right? That's the problem.
And that's, I think, where people derive a lot of the joy, is like at least feeling like I'm the only, like, I'm seeing this now. You just see what I saw. It's, you can't rewind it. If you missed it, you missed it. Like, there's a whole, it's like going to live sporting events. It's, you can watch it on TV, but man, is it different.
I agree totally.
Yeah.
Guys, that brings us to, like I said, everyone's favorite new segment. And that is Judge Jimmy's cross-examination. The way this works, if it's your first time here, Judge Jimmy's going to ask four or five rapid fire questions. The idea is to get an inside sort of scoop on, Stu, who you are as a person, as a gamer, a little bit of like the person behind the work stuff, and the rapid fire. So, just quick, short answers. Judge Jimmy, take it away.
All right, nothing too tricky here, Stu. First question, what is your favorite game to play or watch?
Favorite game to play? I would probably say I'm a big VR person. Yeah, so I've probably invested a little too much money into my VR setup, but so my favorite thing in the last year was easily HalfLife Alyx because I felt like it was finally a AAA title that was like at the VR. So yeah, that's what I would say for that. But then pretty much anything else in VR. So that's been my kick last couple years.
Stu, hold on. I got to cut in here.
Yeah.
Because Half-Life Alyx was supposed to be, in my mind, the killer app for VR. It was going to be, the chosen one, the one that brought everyone to buy headsets. And do you feel like it delivered, or was it just hype that could never be lived up to?
Well, I think using the killer app model for a sport that costs a couple grand to do it well is is hard. Like, I mean, like a killer app for a phone or a tablet means that you have to buy $300 or an Xbox or whatever it may be, is a much different premise than, hey, buy all these sensors, mount them to all your walls, make sure you have a special room in your house, make sure you have a gaming PC that can run it, and then don't forget to strap this thing on your face, wireless if you can afford it, or wired if you can. So like, I think for me, wanting to see the VR industry evolve into more than gimmicky games, I felt like I was finally playing a story-based, well voice-acted, fully involved Half-Life game. So I liked that, and I felt, but no, I did not. I did not have the expectation that suddenly all my friends are going to run out and buy Valve Indexes or HTC Vibes and spend on it just to play Half-Life Alyx, because they called me instead and came over here and played it. But, I didn't think it was going to turn the industry into like a household thing, but yeah, cool. I did think it would represent what was possible in VR storytelling, and I think it accomplished that well. I feel like when you were going around and you picked up a piece of ammo and you checked it over your shoulder in your backpack, I think when you were in a stressful moment and you had to, drop the clip, pull a new one out of your bag, put it in, cock the gun, and then finally you were able to defend yourself in the most with a head crab, like 4 head crabs swinging at you. Like that whole experience was stressful, fun, and felt real. Like, how many times in a game do we just hit R? And it's like, and you're just like back in the firefight. And this time I'm like, I'm trying to reload my game. Like, so I don't know if I can cuss on this show, but anyway, like that was it. So that was what I wanted. And if that's a representation of what could be created in the future, I'm pretty excited about it. Everything else feels like, and they're fun gimmicks. Don't get me wrong. VR has a lot of fun shit in it. I don't know if you played like, what's the putt game? The one that everyone plays. Okay. Anyway, it's like, it actually feels like golf. It like feels like, it's like, it's still a gimmick. I wanted storytelling, I wanted like voice acting. Anyway, sorry you had a bad time. I loved it.
Good game. I expect again, it was like hype. Everyone was saying this was going to be, the thing that made everyone run out and go buy VR hardware. I think
if you could get Half-Life Alyx running at the quality I was able to run it with, my gaming PC on an all-in-one headset, like
a Quest 2 or something. Yeah.
I think that's when those things converge. And I mean, I've probably sold more Quest 2s than anyone I know because people will come over, play a couple games, and they're like, "This is fun." I'm like, "And it's $250." The games are only half a gig, and anyway, I'm not trying to sell it out, but my point is like, it's like that's your entry point. It's like I don't need a gaming PC. I just strap this thing on my face, and I'm in VR. This is sweet. So anyway, we can get those things aligned. It's gonna be cool.
Sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead.
I think we're out of time since Paul hijacked my section. I might have one more question, I guess, before we gotta go. But let's go, Stu. What if you could go back to school? What class, major, subject would you pursue, knowing what you know now, that would most help you today?
Most help me. I don't have something I think I would pursue that would most help me today. I've lived this life. I really enjoyed it. I think I'd want to try something new. For me, it would probably be chemistry and physics. I was a big chemistry nerd growing up, and I miss it, to be honest. and I'm really like kind of infatuated with two different like major things: vertical farming and how that changed the world in terms of food supply and all that. And right now, it takes up too much energy. But with fusion, possibly 20 to 30 years away from going live. So having and being involved in that, I think would change kind of the global availability of scarce resources, and that could change the world. So, yeah, I love physics, but I'm a total amateur nerd about it. Like, people will run circles around me now.
Cool.
I love that. That's a unique answer for us for sure. Let's go one more before we let you go here. I mean, my personal favorite, just because I'm a fat kid at heart, is, what's your go-to food, cuisine, snack, drink when you're gaming? In particular, I open it up to when you're working, because that, sometimes we don't always have time to game anymore. But well, that quick grab, yeah.
Gaming snack that's probably most often bought is probably like Sun Chips or Flamin' Hot Cheetos. I'm nothing healthy when I'm gaming.
That's what I was hoping for.
Working, I try to actually like have healthy food at my desk, because otherwise, like, I work more than I game, so it's much better that I have healthy habits around working. So that's usually salted almonds and stuff like that. Like, yeah, the boring stuff, but good for you.
You had me at Flamin' Hot Cheetos. We don't have to get into it.
You eat them with chopsticks, right?
Yeah. No, those finger ones, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
you have them too? I have them.
One of our co-hosts, Lindsay Poss, sent me actually as a wedding present those finger chopsticks for when I'm gaming.
They're kind
Shout out to Lindsay.
I like them.
Yeah. They're really clever. They are. All right. Well, Stu, I appreciate the time and the answers. That's it for Judge Jimmy. Back to you, Paul.
Stu, for our audience who wants to find you, follow you, learn more about what you're doing, get the latest, like, where can people find you or follow you?
Yeah, I mean, the work stuff you can see all at Lightstream on Twitter, at Rainmaker. So you can find us, I think, primarily on Twitter for those kind of thing. Personally, I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurs around Chicago and through the Techstars ecosystem and all that. And so I post about kind of a lot of those adventures on at StuV2, STU version 2 on Twitter. But that's it. Twitter's kind of the primary bulletin board of what's going on in any of those areas. So reach out.
That's awesome. I encourage everyone to follow Stu. So much great insight. Really appreciated having you on the show. Jimmy, thank you as always. Just a little bit of housekeeping, guys. Just a reminder, the live stream has changed times. If you're a big fan of the live stream, we're now doing it at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. It was a big hit last week. I got a lot of good feedback. People liked the earlier time, liked making it part of their workday, at least on the East Coast and the West Coast. It opens it up also to the Gulf and our community there. And so just a reminder, the live stream's at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday. So make sure to show up for that. Also, make sure to follow Business of Esports on every social platform. We put content up on every platform we're on, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. On every platform, follow Biz Esports or Business of Esports. We really appreciate it, guys. Don't forget the most important thing, the future is fun. We'll see you guys next week.